What causes a cult to happen? My name is Richard Turner. I'm a cult recovery therapist and cult psychology consultant. Without a cult leader, a cult cannot exist. In a lot of the literature, you'll see comments about cult leaders being narcissistic or psychopaths. And we hear the word narcissist thrown around all over the place these days. But in this context, we really mean it. We really mean people with personality disorders who, at best, are causing a lot of damage and at worst are dangerous. A narcissistic person, often lacks empathy. They're often quite arrogant. They have delusions of grandeur. They think they know a lot. They know more than other people. They're more intelligent than other people. They're very insecure. They often can't take criticism, and they're very good at being manipulative and getting their needs met through manipulating people, and often have an underlying kind of like desire to be in control and to control. Now, with that personality, it's probably been caused by upbringing, the things that have happened to them in the past and the environment they've grown up in. And, some of those things you can work through in therapy, the desire to control what's going on internally, what's caused that need to be in control. But the problem is with narcissistic people is, even though some of this stuff is resolvable in therapy, if you're willing to do the work and be vulnerable, narcissistic people often aren't willing, and they don't think there's anything wrong and often think it's everybody else around them that's in the wrong. And often when they're criticised, they will punish, they will all the defence mechanisms will kick in. They'll project outwards and blame other people and not take responsibility for themselves or accept the fact that they don't know everything, they're not perfect. And unfortunately, alongside all of this, they often want to be worshipped and praised and seen to be something special, and they often believe that they are something special as well. Deep defense mechanisms that are quite impenetrable, which of course makes them, at best, a harmful person to be around, and at worst, potentially dangerous. So the cult is driven by this kind of person. And obviously it's important to mention here that in these videos, we're dealing with quite complex things, quite big issues. In fact, sometimes when I'm watching them, I'm picking apart things I'm saying and thinking, well, actually, that's not true in this circumstance, or that's not true in this circumstance. So again, always critique and analyse everything I'm saying and think of other times where what I'm saying might not be relevant. One of the things about producing these videos is I have to condense very complex things down into very simple things so that the video isn't 15 hours long. So anyway, generally speaking, narcissistic people, manipulative, controlling, very insecure, struggle to accept criticism, and also often very unwilling to do anything about it and think they often know more than other people. So that person comes along, and unfortunately, they will often find an environment where they can be in control, where they can become like a godlike figure or worshipped or however you want to term it. Obviously, those people sometimes are a toxic manager in a workplace, or a toxic partner, or a toxic therapist, or something like that. And of course, one of the environments you find this narcissism coming out is in a cult-like group. When you get a narcissistic person controlling a group, often they are self-appointed. If they can't get power in one location, they'll try and get it in another location, and that's why you kind of often get cult groups starting up. So the cult leader, they are very good at buying loyalty. They love bomb a lot. They're very charismatic. They will praise people, tell people how amazing they are, tell them what they want to hear, and that makes them, especially when you initially meet them, more so usually when you initially meet them, makes them very likable because they're praising people and saying loads of nice things about them, and that kind of buys the loyalty of the person. So the cult leader will often create some kind of mythology about themselves as well. They will come up with these kind of stories that imply that there's some kind of savant, or that they're gifted, or that they're very brave. And often there's some kind of backstory for how they became this spiritually enlightened person, or the spiritual experience they had that implied that they were chosen in some way. They try and also exaggerate their own skills, exaggerate the gifts and experience they have to make themselves out to be special, which of course buys people's loyalty because they think they found something special and unique. As the group forms and develops, a lot of the controlling behaviour of the cult leader is wrapped up in the teachings of the group. Now, some controlling behaviour would be really obvious if the cult leader outright said, don't do this and don't do this. So what they do often is wrap it up in the teachings, so it's disguised as part of their belief system. They claim that God wants this, or God believes this, or these spiritual teachings tell you this, but what it really is their controlling behaviour. But they disguise in their controlling behaviour mixed in with the teachings of the group, and that makes it harder to challenge and divert attention away from the leader, so you don't really know it's them that's actually controlling and manipulating you. And in a non-religious group, this can be sometimes tied up in like the business model or the kind of mentoring program that's been created, rather than the truth, which is the leader just finding ways to control people and to exploit them. But of course, people would notice if that was going on. So often it's tied up. The whole group, often the whole ideology and teachings of the group is often just like a projection of the leader's control and manipulation. So for a cult member, it can be quite hard to spot some of the control because it just looks like it's part of the group's teachings. They don't often realise that lots of the teachings are put in there by the leader to control them. Along the way, there will be people who speak out or criticise or raise concerns, and to silence those people, they're often publicly humiliated or punished, and mixed in with the teachings I've just discussed are often counter-arguments for any criticism. So buried within the teachings of the religious group or cult are arguments against anyone who criticises as well. So again, that feeds into that thing that it's unchallengeable. It's not from the leader, it's actually the teachings from God, or it's the spiritual teachings. It becomes like this unchallengeable entity. And within that, like I say, you get the counter arguments for any form of criticism. The leader will also project a lot, so they will accuse a lot of their followers of things that they are doing themselves. And what happens is the teachings of the group from the leader chips away at people's self-esteem, so people are never good enough. All the leader's shame gets effectively put onto the followers. Now the problem with that is what happens is the followers end up working harder and harder and harder to not feel that anymore. But the only framework they have, because they're also isolating people, is the group's framework. So they end up on this treadmill, and their only framework for understanding who they are, where they fit into the world, has come from the leader, which is the framework that's also chipping away at them at the same time. So it actually buys more commitment because they're trying harder and harder not to feel sinful or bad or their ego is dominating their life. And so they become more committed to the group to not feel that shame anymore, which is coming from the leader and the teachings. So they're never good enough. They're on the treadmill all the time. It's a carrot on a stick thing. And all of that keeps the leader in control all of the time, because the followers then work harder and harder and harder to please the leader, to fulfill the leader's mission or the leader's goal. And in that process, they lose their sense of individuality and identity. So everything in a cult is wrapped up in the leader and what they want and fulfilling their needs, and it's ingrained in all of the teachings. It's very hard for people to leave a cult if they think it's them that's the problem. So the struggle people have is they often don't know why people don't leave a cult, and one of the many reasons is they don't think it's the group that's the problem. They think it's them. All of the teachings are about teaching them there's something wrong with them or they're not good enough. So they work harder and harder to not feel that. But unfortunately, because they've been isolated from everyone, they don't often realise that it's actually the cult that's the problem. So they're not identifying the real problem. So they often struggling and working harder and harder, but they don't realise it's the cult that's the problem. On top of that, the leaders also told them usually that if they leave, something bad will happen. And again, it's ingrained in the ideology of the group that the cult leaders' personality and control. So for example, if you had a Christian group, they would say, if you leave us, Satan will come after you, you won't be protected. You're protected while you're in this group. But what that really is the leader saying, I don't want you to leave, I want to be in control, and I'm going to frighten you so that you don't abandon me, because I don't want to be abandoned and left, and I want to control. But because it's wrapped up in a group, it's hard to challenge it. People struggle to identify what the real problem is. If this is a non-religious group, say for example, if it was some kind of mentoring program or therapy thing, what a leader would do is would use like psychological theory about family and trauma and childhood trauma. And often what they might do is something like they'll say, if you don't go down this program, you never achieve freedom from your childhood trauma, and you don't want to mix with your family anymore because they've traumatized you in this way, and this therapeutic journey I've got you on is the only way that you can become what you're meant to be. So it won't have necessarily a religious element, but the leader will use like therapeutic language or mentoring language to isolate you from your family and make you think bad of them, and B, to make you think that their way is the only way that you can reach your kind of like potential, but they're controlling what your potential is as a way of them not being abandoned and keeping them in control. So mixed in all these kind of teachings, there's like a lack of empathy and understanding of and respect for people's individuality and individual needs. The leader is often like fixated on the fact that they have got this goal and this mission, and they want to be worshipped, they don't want to be abandoned, and they want to be in control. Sometimes not so much consciously, but that's what is going on. Within that, people are beginning to lose their individuality. Almost everything that's going on in the cult is about the leader controlling people. Almost everything. It might seem like it's for some good cause, or for people's salvation, or for you to reach your destiny or your potential. What's really going on is the motives of the leader is being repackaged and rebranded with different words to make it look like it's something else. Effectively, a cult leader is rebranding and repackaging their own coercive control as a religion or as a mentor program. Cult leaders are often also very jealous. They don't like people giving attention or affection or admiration towards anybody else but them. So what you sometimes get in cults as well is the leader interfering with romantic relationships and friendships. They will prevent people from getting together in romantic relationships. They will control relationships. They sometimes will put people together, but because they have got a use for that couple, not because that couple actually want to be together. They will have teachings of celibacy, and they will ingrain those teachings into the teachings of the group rather than admit that it's actually just them and their jealousy not wanting people to be together. So they'll say things like, "Oh, God really likes celibacy. He wants you to be on your own, so that you think, oh well, this is part of my religion. I better obey it because it's from God." And really, it's the leader again just repackaging, rebranding their own control and behaviour. I've often heard of leaders as well, where one person is doing really well in a cult group, or they're being really committed, and other people are starting to notice and go, "Wow, that person's done a lot, achieved a lot," and then that cult leader gets jealous and tries to remove them from the position so that other people can't praise them and admire them. So that again, that the praise all comes back onto the leader, and often again they'll use religious language or a language that's repackaged to disguise what they're doing. So they'll say, "Oh, God has moved them to another area," or God wants us to learn about humility and being humble. So it was right for that person. They were becoming arrogant. So as part of their development in our group, in our cult group, we felt that God was saying that they needed to be in a low position. So again, all that coercive control, that manipulation is repackaged with cult language. Another thing that cult leaders do as well as being charming and love bombing, is that they're very good at fake vulnerability, and this is part of the manipulation process. They will admit things and vulnerabilities that actually they're admitting to get people to like them as a manipulation process. It's like pretending to be flawed, pretending to struggle, or sharing things they're struggling with, which actually doesn't reflect badly on them, so that people like them and warm to them. And this vulnerability isn't shared to build relationship or to be open and honest. It's shared to make people feel sorry for them, to build like kind of a trust, so that then they can exploit it later on. So the key things in looking at this topic is the teachings of the group end up being a reflection of the personality of the cult leader. So the cult leader will repackage the controlling behaviour so that it's more palatable to the followers often. Pretty much everything in the cult is about control and people worshipping the leader. Most teachings in a cult are for that one goal. I think it's important to note here too that, you know, as cults grow bigger, people at the bottom have less and less contact with the leader, and what happens is the members who have been in longer, who are more indoctrinated, effectively are carrying out the leader's wishes. So even though the ones near the bottom or the newer members don't have contact with the leader, they are still interacting with the leader's personality through the teachings and behaviours of the senior members and the members that they have got contact with. Sometimes a cult leader will die or move on in some way because there's some kind of scandal, but unfortunately all of the leader's personality is still ingrained in all of the followers. So sometimes you get another narcissistic person taking over, or sometimes the behaviour, you know, the intensity of the control decreases a little bit, but it all is still there in the culture, because all of the ideology and teachings of that group came from the leader's coercive controlling behaviour. So, and they might not be able to recognise it because it's all wrapped up in like a religious teaching or a support or mentor package or some kind of like a therapeutic process that the leaders created. Unfortunately, it's almost like the leader can still be alive and present even if they pass away. Some cults get so big as well that it's harder to pinpoint where the actual original leader is, and then there's like layers of leaders, and then leaders replace other leaders, but it becomes so big that the leader's narcissism is completely ingrained in a huge cult-like group, and it gets harder to spot, you know, what's actually caused it and who the original leader is and where the teachings came from. And it's almost like then becomes like an unstoppable force, unfortunately. And usually around those really big cult groups, there's lots of scandal and cover up, and you know, lots of people know that it's unhealthy, but it becomes an organisation rather than it's the leader's kind of fault. And there are some groups around like that are very, very big and well known. And there's one particular group I get a lot of calls about that's international and on everybody's doorstep. The original leaders from the past have passed away. Other leaders have come in. The controlling behaviour and the ideology of these narcissistic people from the narcissistic person has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and become so ingrained it is now the entire group, and it's almost become an unstoppable force, like an organisation. So that's everywhere, and it's on everybody's kind of doorstep. The bottom line is that everything is about the leader, and they will do everything they can to keep that kingdom. If anyone speaks out, they will try and correct them. If they can't correct them, they'll crush them. They'll kick people out who are causing too much trouble. They will isolate people from anyone who will warn somebody that the group is abusive or controlling. They will lie. They will cover things up. They will do everything they can to keep that power, to keep the control. And unfortunately, the more isolated they get from the real world, often the worse they can become. And we've seen in very big, very famous cults just how bad that can get when a group becomes really, really isolated and out off track and distant from reality. A group can become if a leader is left unchecked. So there you go, cult leaders. Without the leader, a cult can't exist. It's all about the leader. And even when they go, sometimes their personality is alive and well in the teachings of the group. One of the things I've learned about leaders and celebrity and gurus is people are imperfect. We don't know everything. Even the brightest, most intelligent person will say things that are wrong. And it's better to analyse information, weigh up information, take what you think is helpful from somebody and ignore or critique things that you think is not helpful. There isn't this person in the world who has all the answers and who's worth dropping your whole life for and sacrificing your whole identity to follow. The best thing to do, if you ever find yourself in awe of someone and captivated by someone, is maybe take a step back and reflect on anything that they're saying that might be wrong, and look for ways that you disagree with them and try and keep things in balance, because cult leaders try and create a sense of awe, the mythology, the love bombing, the charisma. They are often trying to induce strong emotion in you to kind of captivate you. So if you're ever kind of in a place where you're captivated or in awe of someone, maybe the best thing to do is step back, have a think about what the person's motives might be, and find things in what they're saying that you disagree with to humble them in your own mind. I've found that in life, gurus who know everything don't exist, and the ones who claim to know everything and start acting like God are actually a bit dangerous. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Please leave a comment in the bottom if you've got any questions. Always open to feedback and criticism, and any ideas you've got for other videos or any questions. So take care, guys. Have a good week. Bye bye.